Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias. Thought I'd do a brief rundown on my white smooth bone toothpicks and related knives. And by related knives, I mean knives that have a frame similar to the Powderhorn frame of a toothpick. So these are my Powderhorn frame knives in white smooth bone. And I'm going to start off by taking a look at the very first white smooth bone toothpick I picked up, which is this one right here. This is the Rough Rider 060 tiny toothpick. And the tiny toothpick is probably the most collected of the toothpicks out there. And for good reason. It's a very small knife. Looks very non-threatening, even with that long slender blade going on there with it, and takes up absolutely no room in the collection. So let's say going with a cigar box for comparison, if you were to take a cigar box and want to store your tiny toothpicks in it, you know, just making a single layer, you could probably get about between 20 and 30 tiny toothpicks in that cigar box. Whereas if you were to go with a large toothpick, the 5-inch toothpick, you might be able to get about 10 tops, and they would be very crowded. But if for display purposes, you'd probably put about 5 in there for a nice display, whereas this 20 of these in the same box would make a nice display. So if obviously, you probably wouldn't use all white smooth bone. White smooth bone is just one of those handle materials that I decided to start collecting at a very early time. I assumed that every knife out there was made in white smooth bone. Little did I know that is not the case. There's quite a few of them out there, but not a lot of them, especially when it came to Rough Rider. The only toothpick that Rough Rider makes in a white smooth bone is this one, the tiny toothpick. They do not make a medium toothpick or a large toothpick in white smooth bone, which meant I had to go outside of Rough Rider to find a large white smooth bone toothpick. And the very first one of those I picked up is right here. This is by Baron Son, and if you notice here, it is a limited run. This is number 19 out of 100. So only 100 of these were made in white smooth bone. You see the Baron Son shield in the white smooth bone, which is not what I would have preferred. I would have preferred it without a shield. And you got the wonderful bolsters there, nickel silver bolsters, brass liners. It looks like a nickel silver pin, just a single pin, which holds the back spring in place. And the cool thing about this knife also is it's got a really nice looking shape for a blade. The blade is 448 stainless with a titanium coating, and you see the long French pull there, or long nail nick going on there. This was a very early Baron Son knife, and it is spot on in build. The build quality of this thing is fantastic. I have about 6 Baron Son toothpicks, and all of them are extremely well made. It was later on when they changed the, I don't know what they did, but some of the later ones are not nearly as well made as the newer one or the older ones were. This knife has a very strong pull on it. You'll usually see this shape of blade. Some of them will have a saber grind. Some of them will have a full flat grind. But if you see the knife with this shape of blade on it, it is an early Baron Son knife, and they're really well made. No blade wobble, just fantastic. So these are the earlier Baron Son toothpicks, and they're great. The later ones are still good, but not as good. Let me put it that way. My other toothpick in a white smooth bone is right here. This is by Frost Cutlery. Frost Cutlery does not make a large toothpick in white smooth bone these days. This is one of the earlier ones that was made in Japan, and this is the Frost Cheetah. See right there, the cheetah on the blade. And this is also spot on in build. No blade wobble, brass liners, no shield, brass pins going on, and wonderful bolsters, nickel silver bolsters, full flat grind on the blade. Just a terrific knife in white smooth bone. Made in Japan, so one of the earlier Frost knives, and the build quality is spot on this knife. And that's all I have in toothpicks in white smooth bone. If you notice, I don't have a 4-inch toothpick in white smooth bone. That's because I have yet to find one made by Frost. I have yet to find one made by Rough Rider or many other companies. Matter of fact, the only company I have seen that makes a 4-inch or medium toothpick in white smooth bone is Case, W.R. Case & Son. And they have the annoying habit of doing the same thing that that Bear & Son does, which is put a shield in it. And I wish they didn't do that. I have almost bought the Case medium toothpick in white smooth bone, or what they refer to as natural smooth bone, a couple times, and I've always passed on it because of the shield. But now I realize that my stubbornness is not going to change the mind of W.R. Case & Son, so I really do just need to pick up one of their medium natural smooth bone toothpicks in order to get a white smooth bone 4-inch toothpick. No one else is making them, so that's the way that's going to go. Let's move on to some of the other knives you see here, which are not technically toothpicks, but they do have that Powderhorn frame. And I'm going to start with the two ugly ducklings, and those are the lady leg knives. So this is your 3-inch or your small lady leg knife, and you can kind of see a bit of a Powderhorn there, except they ended up putting the high heel on the bottom here. This is supposed to work as a cap lifter. My experience has been a big negative on that. They look like they would work, but they don't quite work. The difference with the lady leg knife here is you've got a big fat clip blade, which is a lot of people would say is more functional than that little blade you find on the tiny toothpick. But anyone who has actually put challenges to this tiny toothpick blade will tell you that it is much more versatile than it appears to be. You can do quite a bit with it. I actually saw somebody open a can with the tiny toothpick blade. Took a little bit of a challenge, but he managed to do it, and the blade remained sharp. You could probably do the same thing with the lady leg knife there too. Much fatter clip blade, so you got more belly to work with there. This is not the blade you're going to want to use for spreading peanut butter. This one might work a little bit better, but both of them are going to cut up a tomato just fine. And both of them will open an envelope just fine. Matter of fact, the tiny toothpick is an excellent letter opener. In any case, we have the lady leg knife, and then we have the larger lady leg knife. Both of these are by Rough Rider. And you can see the shape of a Powderhorn here, even more so than here. But you do have the leg there. Nice saber grind blade going on here. This is a proper toothpick blade. It's just in the wrong frame. Yeah. And this is about as close as you're going to get to a large toothpick in white smooth bone from Rough Rider, unless they ever bother to just come out and do it. Because as you can see here, overall length of this thing is 5 inches, and the length of the blade here is, well, it's a little short, but 3 3/4 inches or so, you would say, with a 3 1/4 inch cutting edge. If you did not have the foot down here, you could make this blade a little bit longer and get a full 4 inches or 3 7/8 inches out of the blade, and you'd have a really good toothpick. But unfortunately, they decided to turn it into a leg knife. So much for the ugly ducklings. Let's move on to the big boy back here. This is the Deer Slayer by Rough Rider in white smooth bone, and they make quite a few Deer Slayers. They're bringing back this frame too. It seems like they're making more of these knives now, and this is really a hefty knife. We're talking right at 5 1/2, 5 1/4 inches long, closed, with a big old fat clip blade going on here. This is also known as a clasp knife, but yeah, it's also known as a back pocket knife. Blade length on this thing is 4 1/4 inches long, and the cutting edge is about 3 3/4 inches long, and just a monster of a knife. And really, you can see the Powderhorn frame there, but compare that frame to a toothpick, and you can see the difference between a slimline Powderhorn frame toothpick and a full-bodied Powderhorn frame on a Deer Slayer. This knife really fits good in the hand. Your Powderhorn pommel there helps keep the knife in place. You could definitely do some damage by whacking something with that, especially with the point of that. You know, if you were to hit, and that's one of the things I talk about a lot with the Powderhorn frame. You've got the point there, and whack, and you're talking about incapacitating an animal with that. Cracking a skull or something like that on a small game to put it out of its misery, just by whacking it with the pommel of your Powderhorn. So I think that is part of the reason why the pommel of the Powderhorn is the way it is. You've got a sharp point that can really do some damage. In any case, there's the Deer Slayer. And then this little guy here, this is one of the earliest Rough Riders I picked up, and I picked it up because, wow, that frame just looked really cool. And this is like it's kind of like a shrunk down version of a Deer Slayer, but it is also like an overfed toothpick, the tiny toothpick. And it's just kind of a really cool knife. And when I first bought it, it was being sold as the El Diablo. Now, Rough Rider just calls it the 3-inch lockback. They have a lot of knives that they just call it a 3-inch lockback. They still make this one also. This is a knife that has not left production. They also make it in a couple other handle materials other than white smooth bone. But you see the blade here, it's a nice little drop point blade. So it's definitely a different shaped blade. You got a lot more belly on it, so a lot of people are going to find that a little more functional. This is a very small handle, but you squeeze it tight and you can hold on to it really well. This one has a lot more belly on it, and it just kind of drops into the hand. You get a full 3 fingers on there, and it just feels good. It's a really nice little knife, and well, like I said, it's like an overweight toothpick or a fat toothpick, something like that, or it's a mini size Deer Slayer, whatever way you want to look at it. Let's move on to the other 3 knives here, which are relatives of the toothpick right here. And I'm going to start with this one here. This is a Legil style of picnic knife. We have an actual Legil here. We'll compare these a little bit in a minute. This was most likely made in Pakistan. I do not know for certain, but that's where I would place it, simply because of the Damascus blade going on, and the fact that the bone handle here was listed as white smooth camel bone as opposed to white smooth cattle bone. You've got wonderful brass bolsters, and then you've got the brass cigar band going down the middle here, and then brass pins. You have the file work going on the back, and you got the Legil B. Now, again, this is a Legil style knife. This was not made in France, I'm sure of that. I usually refer to this as a picnic knife, or I will say it's a Legil style knife. It is not a true Legil. Do you have the pigtail on the back here, or corkscrew? And it's a nice little corkscrew. Got a little bit of a bounce in it, which is good. I always like a little bit of over travel in the corkscrew, because that really does help with pulling the cork. And then you see here it's got the little catch there. Notice how it's cut out there and deeper in on the pivot. That is so it can lock underneath the B here. And when we lift it up, we can see a little bit of that catch underneath the B. When it closes, it locks in place, but the lock is not nearly as strong as it should be. Still, you got the continuation of the file work on the back blade here. Nice hollow grind on this blade. It is a suspect Damascus steel, but still nice and tight. No blade wobble going on, and good lockup. Not the world's greatest, but pretty good. You can see here that it has a steel pin for the pivot. It doesn't have a brass pin, but get it closed up. And that's in white smooth bone, the Legil style knife with a corkscrew. Let's move on to the actual Legil. Now, this was a gift to me from a fan of the channel. It was an anonymous gift, and this is from Forge de Legil. This is a true Legil knife made in France. And you can see significant differences right away. Just look at the difference in the file work. Look in the work on the B, how detailed the B becomes with the true Legil. Beautiful white smooth bone. You have the shepherd's cross in there. I have no problem with the shepherd's cross in there as opposed to the shield on the toothpick. Shepherd's cross is kind of almost a defining feature of Legil's to me. So I really like this knife. Beautiful white smooth bone, and this blade is razor sharp. I nicked myself earlier today. Hear that lock up there? See the lock there? It's well defined. And as we pop this, see the cutout underneath the B? That's where it's going to drop into. And when it drops, it locks the blade. It's known as a half lock, I guess. That's what some people refer to it as. It is not a true lock on the blade, so it is not considered a locked blade. However, it adds a lot of strength to it so that you have to give it a little bit more oomph to finally get that blade lock to release. So it is a bit of a safety feature on there. And then once you get it popped past that location, you can go ahead and close the blade. This blade does have a little bit of a play there, so the kick is resting on the back spring, but still, typically with Legils, it's a good idea not to let them slam shut because they may over travel a little bit, and the blade is very close to the spine on these knives. So blade wrap is a common complaint on some Legils. This one I don't think has any blade wrap whatsoever, though. This one has a lot of blade wrap. And that brings me to the last of my toothpick style knives. And I found this one at a fair where they were doing forging and stuff like that. People were actually forging knives and forging cowbells and forging all sorts of other stuff. And one booth that was set up had some knives in it. I did not see it. My wife saw it and she pointed it out to me. She said, "Hey, there's some knives over there that I think you might like." And I went over there, and this was the knives that they were selling. They must have had about 8 or 9 knives like this. And the woman who was at the booth said, yeah, that they were made by her husband. I don't know if the husband just assembled them and received the blades from somewhere else or what. The blade has absolutely no marks on it whatsoever, so I have no idea who made the knife or anything else. I don't know if the blade was forged by her husband or if he had bought them. What I do know is it's a really well-made knife, and I like the bone. Notice the bone covers the entire handle. There's no bolsters there. He cut some lines back here for like the bottom of the bolster. The top was straight across, and so it was at a sharp angle, but I took a file and I filed it down to round it off a bit, so the pinch on the top here was done by me. I did that purposely because I was worried about the top chipping. Brass pins holding everything in place, and a wonderful blade. And you got the ring release here. I prefer to call it a ring release because the blade locks in place, and the ring does not lock the blade. The ring actually releases the blade. So when you pull on it, the blade will pop loose. And if you notice, it has the same kind of lock that you see on the Legil. This is the same kind of lock that you see on a lot of Navajos that have the lever release. And that's because the ring release was the earliest version of it. Now, the difference between the release on the Legil and this is this catch locks closer in or deeper into the spring here, and the spring will not move. It's the way it is designed. It is not going to move, as opposed to this spring has a little bit of give in it. So when you press against it with the lock will cause it to release. But the only way this will release is to pull up on the ring, and that will release it, and then it will close. With the Navajos, you have a similar cut going on, and when it locks, what will release it is by pressing up on the lever. See how it lifts the spring up, and then that will free it up, and then you can close it. That's the difference between it. So the ring is doing the same basic function. It is pulling it up. The ring is the earlier version of lock or release versus what you see on the Legil and on the Navajos. This is the earlier style of release, is the ring release. In any case, one of these days I'll also get a Navajo and white smooth bone. I haven't gotten one yet, but that is the next one I really need to get for the collection. That and a 4-inch medium toothpick. But in any case, I hope you enjoyed watching this, and well, I'll talk to you again soon. Stick around for some slides. let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with the Pious. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.